What's going on, everybody? It is Seamus and Marcos with the Macro Perspective Podcast. We are in the double digits. This is episode 11. Marcos, I'm super excited. You know, it feels great to hit a milestone. How do you feel about our 10 episode milestone, sir?
We kind of cheated. We split one of our ones into two parts, but you know what? Gotta give the people what they want. Shorter episodes, timestamps, all that stuff. So we're learning. But as people probably can notice, we changed it up, added a little flavor into the top right corner of this recording.
We're going professional up in here, guys.
Yeah, we're making it a real thing. We said, you know what? Let's put a little money into it. Watch the evolution come together, and we're just having a good time. I mean, honestly, I feel like for me, this has been, since doing this, it's like been a push in so many areas with reading and you know, just trying to learn that I'm stoked. So we'll keep it running as long as we can.
I'll be the same. I feel like it's a really nice kind of part of the week to look forward to, kind of get ready for, and have topics ready to go. And it kind of delves into a lot of parts of my life too, how to become a better communicator, how to become a better you know, just simplifier of information, you know, when things come out, and basically how to organize things. So love it. I think, you know, we're going to start this podcast with a topic. And I know a lot of our topics from the last 10 episodes, I don't think we've actually really hit this topic in depth, right? I think we've talked about nutrition a lot. We've talked about hormonal health a lot, and sleep, and maybe like tips on how to like make your kitchen better and stuff like that, which is all like auxiliary to like what a fitness and nutrition could be. But let's talk about fitness now. So today our topic, guys, is going to be picking the best workout for your goals. So Marcos, if you want to kind of introduce kind of like what that would be, and we'll dive into it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start by first understanding why it's important, right? I feel like for most people, they look at just the end product and they're not so concerned about the journey. But as a person who may have been successful in the past, and now you're bombarded with, you know, TikToks and different social media platforms with their 5-second tips, you might become overwhelmed in picking something because, oh, that looks really fun. So having a true goal in place is something that, you know, should be addressed first. And then from there, you know, maybe again, talking to a professional in whatever kind of fitness criteria category that you're currently after, and getting their feedback of like where the best place to start is, or kind of optimizing a plan might be where you then go, right?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think it's easy to kind of hear things like, hey, get on a fitness plan, do this, do that, because social media tells you to do so. But if you're not doing it for a set reason and a set why for you, and not really taking stock of like where you're at, you can get pulled into a direction that you actually don't agree with, right? So I highly agree. Like I would say take stock of where you're at and then assess what your goals are. Everyone's goals are very different, and each type of training modality is different for that. Some people want to just train because, hey, look, you know, 6 months from now, it's summertime, they want to look good in a bikini. Great goal. But some people need to train because like their life actually depends on it, because they have like a certain type of issue that they need to deal with. So it's a different mindset. So we have to look at these different nuances and really get peculiar with what we want, because it's very important to find the right workout plan for you. Because if you don't, chances are you'll find something. It might be a little extreme, or it might not fit the bill for you. And then what might happen is you just totally say, hey, because of that experience, all experience is similar to that, I'm just not going to do. And I've seen that with clients, and I know you have too, Marco. So
yeah, it shouldn't be or come as a surprise to anybody that sometimes with a fitness goal, you can quickly lose sight of, again, maybe what you're after, right? In the beginning, or why you get it all started, right? So, you know, for my personal story related to this, it first started with probably like everybody's goal, looking good naked. You know, I was an 18-year-old kid. I'm like, damn, I just want to not feel uncomfortable in my own skin. And I literally just was like, I'm going to go try out this class. I see a bunch of people pushing themselves, you know, in a CrossFit setting. That looks fun. That looked fun to me. everybody was suffering. I don't know why that was appealing.
They're dying over there. Let's do it.
Because yeah, and again, like I think it was because it looked hard and I wanted a challenge, and that was a really good way of being like, well, I'll probably show up if I'm constantly challenged, right? So my goal is to continue to show up 5, 6 days a week, and that seemed like the easiest way of becoming a catalyst, having
Yeah.
people to report to.
Yeah.
And these were other college students, so they were like your peers, but also kind of like a mentor. So I mean, that was a very unique situation. But I look back and I'm like, my true fitness journey, as I so think of it now in my like adult years, was really just being motivated by seeing other people doing difficult challenges and being like, honestly, feats of strength. And I was like, fuck,
Yeah.
I was like, what does it look like to get there? Like a 315 squat clean, and this guy making it look fucking effortless.
Yeah.
Drew Canavero. I still remember his name to this day, man. I mean, it was bonkers. And then, sure enough, it's like, now I can actually do that weight, 10 years later. I mean, it's insane. It's insane that like something can be so inspiring. So, that's like my story of like finding the right thing for me at the time that led into like a new journey and being open to other ideas. But what about for you? Like, what was your?
Yeah, my journey, it's really interesting. So everyone's gonna laugh at this, but like I got started into fitness when I was like 11 or 12, because I was a little chunkster. To be quite honest, I think it was just baby weight. And here's the funny thing: I was actually a really thin kid. I got bigger, and here's a funny story. I got bigger moving from the Philippines to here because obviously in the Philippines, like just different food groups. And then when I moved here, I got a little bit bigger, but it wasn't even like that big. It's not like, oh my God, he was like obese or something. He was just like being a teenage kid, like being a small kid, having some baby fat on him. But what happened was I got into, you're gonna laugh at this. The what was her name? Because my mom had her DVDs, and I was like, I'm gonna do this fitness class. It was the Julie. She was like one of the fat.
Oh yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on her name, but she was one of those coaches on.
Julia Child? No, I'm just kidding.
No, Julia Child. Well, it's not cooking class. No, it was like Insanity, P90X, and then this lady that was like big on The Biggest Loser. Those kind of DVDs, and it was like, okay, cool. So I started getting into that, and then I got into a wrestling program in middle school to high school. And with that being said, during that time, I was like, well, what does it mean to be like an athlete? So I was like, well, let's train. And CrossFit was getting big at this time. I remember like Rich Froning vlogs, Dan Bailey vlogs, and they were just like working out with each other. I was like, these are sick. So I got into CrossFit. But the problem with CrossFit and a sport is the sport, it's how do you say this? It's competing with the sport. You need like a real plan with the sport, right? So CrossFit is always going hard and wrestling is always going hard. And that's how I got hurt a lot. And that's how I got into the field. I wanted to get in the field because I was like, I want to get in a field like physical therapy or like exercise science, because how can you prevent getting hurt when you're training at high peak performances, right? And then I realized, oh, that's right. You don't go hard every single moment. You don't go into a class and try to clean and jerk 315 like you were doing, and then go to wrestling practice and there's a tournament this week. No, you have to be smart, you idiot. And I realized there's a lot more to it, and now I'm a lot smarter. But that was my intro into the fitness spaces, like these DVDs. I love the P90X, by the way, and Tony Horton and all those guys are great.
And I was listening to another podcast that talked about Tony Horton making a comeback after being like really sick, right?
Yeah,
and he's like now selling something that seems a little scammy.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting, but like that dude still is a legend. I remember that. Honestly, best abs I ever had were the P90X ab
Ripper X.
17
minutes, bro.
Dogs, bro.
17 minutes of horrible. And then my buddy introduced it. And he's like, "Let's do that again." I was like, "What?" What? I just did 17 minutes of abs. I am not doing that again, my guy.
He's like, Pfeiffer scissors, man. Pfeiffer scissors. Those things were. I just remember holding on to, like, I still have the same bed frame from when I was like going through that like young fitness phase.
Yeah,
I'm gonna call that the on and off fitness phase of my life, right? Sports specific. And being in my bedroom at like 11 at night, popping the video on bootleg. By the way, I paid like $15 for it. Someone burned it to like a DVD.
That's great.
And throwing it on. And to this day, I'm like, dude, I mean, technically Beachbody has an app, and you can still access that stuff if that's what like is nostalgic to you and helps you get started.
I'll
And
be honest, man. Those DVDs changed a lot of lives. They changed a lot of lives, so I got to give it out to them. You know.
hey, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, man. Like again, picking the the best workout for your goals. So, fun statistic: approximately 80% of people who start an exercise program will typically drop out within the first 2 months. And
Hmm.
again, this is likely due to a variety of reasons. It could be lack of motivation, lack of time, injury, lack of progress in meeting the goals, right? And I think the biggest thing here is the finding of ways to stay motivated is a unique endeavor of itself, right?
Yeah.
And this is what we talk about in terms of like a journey. It should be a part of something you want to sustain in your routine that makes you feel good, right? Maybe
Mhm.
you're checking the box on some of those achievable goals. For me lately, it's been working out with a buddy. It's been
Yeah.
amazing. Big push. I mean, the other day I did 3 sets of 5 at 125 dumbbells for bench, and I probably wouldn't touch those if it wasn't.
Jeez, man. 125 on each hand. Lock it
Lock
in.
it in, busted shoulder and all. And again, so the buddy could be helpful, or again, that trainer or someone that's programming for you, and then you're reporting to. Like there has to be some sort of exchange because I've found it myself. It's like, while you can be the most internally motivated individual of all time, it eventually gets boring. You know?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'm kind of at odds with my training right now as well. Where the last 7 to 8 months was I was doing training for putting on muscle mass, and it really hurt my ego because like I don't like to put on that much body fat as well because I was eating almost close to 4,000 calories. So for me, very difficult. Like I've talked about this body dysmorphia that I had before, um, but then now I'm cutting again, which is great, and I'm looking good. And I have some goals with the physique, but then I'm also at the odds of like, well, I also like jujitsu. And, like I train, but no one trains with me because you know what time I train? I train at 5 a.m. I have no friends. There's no friends at 5 a.m. They're not like, I'm going to go see Sheamus at 5 a.m. No, they're not going to do that. So for me, like training does get very much cerebral for me because it's an hour at 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. and I get after it, then I go to work. So for me, I need that like connectivity time. I've learned that about myself, and I'm like, I need to go to jujitsu once a week, and I need to fit that in. If I don't fit that in, I mentally, I my mental health gets kind of because the last 8 months it showed like mentally I was kind of like, why am I in a funky space? And I'm allowing that funky space to be there, but I'm like, oh, it's because I'm not around other men or people that are pushing me, calling me out, and trying to make me better through a sport that I love. And that happened this weekend too, where someone called me out. He's like, "Hey, like, you're really good, but like you're doing this and this and this." And I was like, "Oh, man, you're 100% right." Like he called me out, but in a good way. And I kind of thrive off of that. I kind of thrive off that kind of environment where there's people pushing you, being real authentic, but like in a very positive reinforcement way, not in a way that's like trying to put you down or anything. So, I've been there. I've been there, right?
As we all have, man. I mean, I'm in like a perma bulk, you know? It's
The
like I'm constantly like I get like a little bit of headway with the diet and then something comes up. And it's been this way for the last year. As we started looking for our house about a year ago. It was like the first 8 weeks of this cut phase got down. Yeah, I think I got down to 210, but then we got into the move and then it was just like eating for comfort and my wife and I at each other's throats. Not really, but kind of, just
Just a
not.
stress of moving, yeah.
Yeah, it was just a distraction. The biggest thing that usually leads to divorce for people is typically like moving locations. And my wife and I have moved like 5 times in our relationship, like once a year.
Dang, that's a lot of stress.
It tests us. She's like 5 times. We've only been in like 4 places, and I'm like, well, we moved into my parents' house. You forget, like that's still a move, right? Like it was still like a
Yeah,
change of scenery for a little while, even though it
yeah.
was, albeit a short-lived one. Um, but that's that again. Like uh, finding it's like solitude, being okay in your headspace with knowing that this is only temporary, right? The training can be the constant, and the food you can kind of be fucking off a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's kind of my routine. Super solid 2 meals and then fuck off for dinner, and that keeps me at maintenance, right?
Yeah.
I'm not progressing up or down. Training still feels good. All right, cool. And training is more of that like cognitive enhancer. It's that cognitive candy, as I like to call it. Like start your day off with that workout and or a walk for me. My mind is just feeling ready and primed for that like initial 2 hours, you know,
Oh,
whether
I'm the
they're,
same way. I'm the same
yeah,
way.
whether it's
Yeah.
like starting with my classes or getting on some client calls or, you know, patient calls, whatever. That's the, to me, that's the most important thing. I'm choosing to pick workouts right now that gives me just like, I feel good, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not chasing a goal of like body composition, and or really strength. I'm just like, I want to get in there, feel good. Again, having the partner has been really helpful because
Yeah.
we're talking about life, we're talking about business, and it's
Mhm.
awesome. So,
I love
um,
it.
Seamus, types of workout, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Some pros and cons or benefits of them, you know,
Yeah.
and comings, right?
Let's go through them all. I got a few notes here. Like, obviously, we have like the resistance training, cardiovascular training, and then there's offshoots of that like HIIT, yoga, CrossFit, boot camp, marathon training, endurance athlete, bodybuilder, Legree, body
Mm,
pump. There's so much. There's so much. Let's just put a few categories there. I definitely think they all play a role of having some form of resistance training in there. They have some cardio, they
mhm.
have some mobility, and then they have some like other auxiliaries like balance or something like that. Um, when it comes down to it, I think it comes down to your kind of like the things we were just talking about. Like, does it hit certain things for you? Like, your schedule. Like, what time can you do it? Is that a constraint? Um, do you like the type of movement in there? Do you feel like that's kind of like your personality? Do you like, hey, just resistance training, putting on some headphones and just kind of locking in some movements for a few sets? Or do you like to take off the headphones, be in a class, and do a resistance class like body pump, which is a great class, by the way. It's a really good class. Um, or do you like to be person that's outdoors and go like, I need an hour and a half literally on the bike outdoors, and I need to do an ultra, I need to do an Ironman. Like that, those are things there, but you got to look at like the constraints too, like the amount of time, the schedule, the weather, where it is going to take place,
Mhm.
who's watching the kids, equipment needs, cost needs. I think people forget that, right? They might just jump into something. They're like, oh, I'm just going to get into it. It's like, oh, well, if you're gonna get into like biking, you're gonna need these bike shoes that are $500. You're gonna need this new bike that's $1,500, and you got to track a route. Oh, it's probably best to go with a group, So,
Mhm.
and oh yeah, the weather sucks. So I don't know. So I think in terms of figuring out a class, like there's a lot of things, but do you like more resistance training with a community? Might be like a CrossFit or like a boot camp. Do
Mhm.
you like doing cardio and like do that? Maybe you might be doing a running club. Or you might just be doing some of these things alone, or might be doing like your Zumba class. Like there is so many variations on types of training and kind of classes around it, if that makes sense.
For sure. And I feel like, I guess, while there's only technically, right, two types of exercise, right? Anaerobic and aerobic, by scientific standards. Even then, I feel like the one that always has confused me is like you become so taxed aerobically, now you're into anaerobic, but then like lifting weights, technically your heart rate gets up there, but it's not the same like feel, right? As that
It's not the same. There's two different. I think there's two different adaptations. So back in my college days, like they say, like even though your heart rate gets up when you weight lift,
Mhm.
what is happening is your heart is hypertrophy, is muscularly growing thicker walls. So the blood volume shrinks. So that's why you hear a lot of bodybuilders have heart issues because their heart thickens so much.
Mm.
Not to say that this will happen for like a normal resistance trainer. So keep resistance training. But when you're cardiovascularly training at the higher outputs, your heart hypertrophies longevity. It grows in the length, so the volume gets bigger. So that's why you always need a combination of both. And that's the difference between the two, in my opinion. But obviously, yeah, you can get into anaerobic zones when you're doing aerobic work because your heart is just under so much taxation.
Yeah. I Yeah, and I guess too, now that I think about it, right? Like phosphocreogenic cycle, the ATP transfer is different for that versus like glycolytic work versus true aerobic. So I guess there's three in
There's
that
three
like
zones. You
three
have your
zones,
ATP.
right?
Yeah, you have your ATP PCR zone, which is like the first 10 to 15 seconds. You have your glycolytic zone, which is like up to 2 minutes, and then you have your cardiovascular, which is anything above 30 minutes, right? So ATP glycolytic is like a shot putter, someone that throws something explosively in less than a split second, right? A glycolytic person would be probably a person running a 400 meter. That's within 2 minutes. Some people can run that really fast, but that's still within 2 minutes. And then you're looking at your cardiovascular. That's your like marathon runner, or anything above 30 minutes, really. So,
Well, I think that's a good thing to point out, though, right? Like, if you were to look at all the different body compositions relative to those three examples you just gave, right?
yeah, what would you think they are?
Yeah, like you think of marathon runner, you think of really lean.
Lean,
You
yeah.
know, they may or may not have a ton of muscle definition depending on what type of person they have been in the past, right?
Mhm.
That middle person, well, that second example, remind me again, who you said? You said
That's like a 400-meter runner, 800-meter runner. It's like 2 minute
like a
zone.
Usain Bolt type, where
Yeah,
like very striated, very lean as well, but again, like also gutting it out for these sprint like efforts, right?
yeah.
Um, and then the shot putter, again, you might think of like a power lifter as well, like that body type. And again,
Bigger.
pick your, pick your body type, right?
Yeah.
Those things, again, you may have a proclivity of creating that particular composition as a result of what you're doing, but you know that may be where you start with your goal. Like, who do I want to look like, right? And
That's a
again,
great goal, yeah.
right? Like, and you're like, oh, okay, like I kind of like that bigger look and that like that power that athlete generates. I like kind of like, what Usain looks like, or like a CrossFitter, right?
Mhm,
It's like,
mhm.
or I like the marathon look. I like being like slender and lean and seeing all these like insertion and origin points, you know what I mean? And kind of being an
A
anatomy,
nice lean frame, yeah, yeah.
and I
Yeah,
think that's important because you will then understand that that's where you want to then dedicate the bulk of your training, that pathway, right?
yeah,
So just
100%.
body type selection alone might be the first thing you question in order to
Look,
then pick a workout.
I'm training to look like Thor, guys, like
Well, I'm sure Hemsworth has a good doctor.
I'm sure Hemsworth has a good doctor to put on 37 pounds of muscle in 30 days or 90 days or whatever. But I mean, it's a great aspiration. So that was my point. I was joking. Like, pick somebody where they're in a realistically like good field, because there are problems nowadays where, and I've seen this on social media, people of this might listen, this may not see this, but like on social media, people are like young and they are getting on things because they saw somebody and were like, well, I want to look like that. And they're like, okay, cool. Like, I'm just going to go ahead and take this, this, and this. Um, and then they do start looking like that, but like, to what detriment, right? They're 18, 20-year-olds that are taking things that I've never heard of, but they look great. They look great, but you also have to play that fine line of like, hey, yeah, you want to look great, but understand that like there might be some underlying back end stuff that you don't know what's going on. So take that with a grain of salt too, right?
100%, and I mean, how many people after the Liver King stack was exposed, people were like, "Oh, that's what that's it. That's what I'm doing for sure." Right now that I know the truth behind the 11th tenant, right?
Yeah.
Um, um, but so for me, I think the benefits of strength training and resistance training as a whole. So I'm gonna lump like bodybuilding. Is body pump kind of uh like a more of a resistance training kind of program?
Dude, body pump. So I've done one. Body pump is almost like a 45-minute like resistance training program, but like you're going the whole time.
Okay.
Um, so like you have like a bench, you have like some dumbbells and then like some weights, and then you kind of like, it's almost like muscular endurance sets. Like,
Mm,
you're not taking any weight that's like super heavy, but
gotcha.
you're not taking anything to like where you're gonna get hurt. So it's kind of like more muscular endurance kind of stuff. So,
Okay. So
uh,
it probably might lump body pump similar to a CrossFit or boot camp.
I would say it's more like that. Like it's a 45-minute like circuit, like pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
I mean, bodybuilding is kind of its own beast, right?
Well,
Like,
bodybuilding is a sport, so people need to recognize that too. Like it's a sport, right?
do you consider
Um,
a sport without a ball?
well, chess is a sport. Rubik's cube is a sport.
What? What's the definition of sports? Let's go ask
Something with competition. I
ChatGPT.
mean, it just depends. Like you can look at it as like competition, right? Um, like X Games is a sport that doesn't have a ball.
Mm.
This is gonna be an argument that we can have for days, but I'm just saying, like, it's a competitive place with the body. Let's just say it like that.
You're
It's a
right. You're right.
competitive,
A
a
sport is an
competitive.
activity that is competitive in nature, typically involving physical exertion and played according to a set of rules or guidelines. Sports often require participants to use specific skills or techniques in order to overcome outcomes of the opponent and achieve a certain goal. All
You
right.
know what?
So
I would say bodybuilding isn't. It could not be. It's almost like a pageant. Let's just say it like that. Like,
it's
I'm about to get
I agree
grilled.
with that more. And I think like this is also why dance and bodybuilding are probably the same beast
I would
because
say so.
it's a subjective measure, right?
Hmm.
You're not out there lifting the heaviest load and objectively winning something. Therefore, to me, those things are classified in something very similar. But it's also obvious when the talent that is at the top is at the top, right?
Yeah.
You know, shout
Yeah.
out to the UNLV Rebel Girls because you know they be killing it all the time, and it is clear. And again, I have no clue what the hell's going on in the choreography, but I'm like everything's so smooth and the different pieces and components.
Precision,
It's one of
choreography.
it's like an art form, right? Obviously, so
Yeah.
like bodybuilding is kind of an art form.
It's an art. It's an art with the body, and it's hard because so most people like I'm gonna train like a bodybuilder, but the rest of their life is like not going on stage to look good. Like they just look good like at work. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
it's weird. It's weird. Like CrossFit in itself also too like is weird because CrossFit in itself, there's like 2 to 3 forms of CrossFit. Like there's
Mhm.
the CrossFit at the gym, right? And then like which is like your normal training. Then there's the CrossFit Games, and then there's like the CrossFit like open, like where everyone can take part of and see what how they stand against. It's like those are all different training modalities, like, but they're all under the roof of CrossFit, right? So which one's a sport, which one's just like being at the gym, you know?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, nonetheless, all right.
That
That was a quick aside. Quick
was
aside.
a quick side note, but let's
Yeah,
move on from there. I think our thing was what is our best practices for starting a new workout? We'll move on.
yeah.
So best practices for starting a new workout. Okay, so we've gone through a few guys. I know we talked about CrossFit, boot camp, hit, bodybuilding, Legree, body pump, marathon, strength and conditioning, whatever it is. I think first off, after you've kind of discussed with somebody or yourself, like what your clear and specific goals are, you've kind of determined the type of workout you want to do, you figured out like your schedule. I think, a great thing, like Marco said, is find a workout partner or find a place that you can do it at
Mhm.
and make sure you're guided by a professional for some time or in eyes of professionals. Doing it at home is great. But then you'd have to like buy gym equipment or you'd have to buy a bunch of things. I think the best thing is just get like a 24 hour, like $10 a month kind of thing. It's easy. You can drive there. I know there's the like I gotta drive there, I gotta do this. Hey, you've got a goal in mind. Let's get to it, right? Um, and I think what once you figure that out, I think the biggest tips for me is I always tell people, look, just get to 3 days. Get to 3 days. It does not need to be every day.
Mhm.
Um, I think the smaller the goalpost is, or like the smaller the mountain that you have to climb, the more willing you have to do it. Because all you need right now, it's not the best workout. It's not the best cooked dish on your meal plan. It's not the best night of sleep. What you need is momentum. And how you create momentum, guys, is by making small wins. I got to my 30-minute workout today. Beautiful. I got to the workout on Friday. I finished the week strong. Awesome. I got to that workout. It wasn't the best. I didn't know what to do. I was looking for equipment the whole time. Lots of jack dudes everywhere. All these girls in their thongs, pretty much. I don't know what to do. um, but you got to it, and with the trials and tribulations, it's just about the momentum. So I just start. I just, to be honest, best practice for me, Marcos, I think with any endeavor is start small. What about you?
Yeah, I like quantification
Mm,
and and is remediation the word here? Hold on. It's
geez, what does that mean?
actually, I'm remedying something. Okay, yeah, maybe not. But basically, I want to minimize the amount of quote effort that I would then have to do to continue to objectify things. Uh,
Yeah,
and sometimes it could be as easy as cleaning up your health app on your phone for if you have an Apple or an Android, and that could then be like your hub of everything you're trying to do, whether it is you logging the workouts or logging the key points of the day, right? and a lot of it then being turned into a background activity for your phone. Because
Love
then
that.
you're just checking in on that spot, and it's like it's constantly updating based on other places you might be inputting from. And that's been
Like checking your
really helpful.
bills.
What's that?
It's like
Yeah,
just checking your bills, right? Yeah.
yeah, it's just like financial literacy in that regard, right? Like I had an old boss tell me that, hey, like you got to check your first thing every day. You got to check your accounts. I'm like, what? The money's just going to be gone? It's like no, but like there are some expenses that you forget about that are getting drawn on, right? And may not always be the same day every month for whatever reason. So yeah, I like being able to just have a spot. You're looking at it. It acknowledges some of the goals that you have. I've tried some habit tracking apps that are like sending me reminders and they just bother the fuck out of me. So I just delete them.
Yeah,
That's just
I just they get ignored. They get ignored by me, dude.
the biggest one that I found recently that's really helped me though in this last week. It's like 2 days in has been I've been scheduling quote downtime. So you can
Mm,
schedule your iPhone to have downtime, which is like, hey, I'm cutting my app usage from night till morning, right? I'm
beautiful.
doing it in the reverse sense. I'm cutting out my app usage during the workday, and I feel way more productive already, right? Because I'm moving away from the behavior of opening the phone, just picking up Instagram, and I'm like, dude, today like 5 times alone, I'm like, oh yeah, duh, like I'm trying to like break, I'm trying to quit the
I need to
smoking.
be on that, man. I could be on the phone for like 45 minutes. I'm like, what did I just do?
So that's like a best practice for me is like my
Yeah,
my setting of achievable goals. I always just phase in one new thing at a time, right? Starting pretty small, and again, it could just be setting up the time window being the certain thing, an eating reminder at the beginning, and to me, choosing those things are have been the most impactful. I mean,
yeah.
shoot, dude, I took up like a walking habit 3 years ago as the result of working with somebody else, and now I'm at like on average this year's like 13,000 steps, and it's just like, wait, what? Like, and person I walk with, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, um, she and I are talking. She's like, it's crazy. You just go for walks like this all the time. I was like, yeah, because it clears my headspace. I can still answer emails. I can still be doing other things, but like, you know, we live in this, an environment now where um, that could be something that again is helping pull in a lot of things that help you with that goal. So
No, I love that.
yeah,
I love that. I think, to kind of conclude like everything, I think, you have to do a little research, right? Um, Based on what you want as your goal, right? Like you said, right? And I think to quantify that, have to have some quantifications
yeah,
with a quantified self, whether that's a fitness app, a journal, a nutrition app like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer or Carbon or all the there's so many things out there. I think the biggest thing to do is just you just got to
mhm,
start it out. Again, I like to say start small, but be patient and be persistent, right? Like we kind of told you. I think you have to emphasize basically the big thing for everybody is like you're going to have a goal, you're going to have your constraints, you're going to have your work, you're going to have your life schedule, you're going to have your health condition, whatever that is.
mhm,
Um, but what's going to make you work out the most? And I think the easiest thing to make someone work out the most is if you enjoy it. If it's not something that like you feel like it's gonna be like at first it might feel like a chore. It will. It will. That's
yeah,
because you're trying to create something new. You're trying to create a new habit. But if it becomes seamless, it becomes something that you want to do and you look forward to on your schedule, you will be more likely to do that thing and enjoy it for more sustainable outcome. And again, you may not even have a goal. You just want to work out. Even better, right? Like
mhm.
there's no if and or buts. You're just doing the thing. So I think with that being said, that's how I would conclude it. Any other points, Marcos, for you?
So I'm going to relate this to my most recent reading because that's the point of learning new shit is to try to like bring it into conversation, right? The book I'm reading is called The Fun Habit. And honestly, like I grabbed this book simply because the cover, I should have it nearby, wasn't prepared, um, was so vibrant. And I was just like, I don't know what's drawing me to this right now, but they did a good job of marketing this. And it was like, I
Yeah.
hadn't even read the title yet. I was like, interesting choice, right? But in the, as they're talking, as this, PhD is giving you his IP, right, his intellectual property, which basically
Yeah.
everything does.
I
Here's
like
my
this book.
system. Yeah, here's my system, and here's how you can maybe get thinking. He talked about this model he calls the play model, PLAY, right? And I was trying to pull up a timeline and share it, but it looks like it's still obviously it just got under copyright, so it's probably not like on the interwebs too well. Um, So P stands for pleasing, L is living, A is agonizing, and Y is yielding. These are all the types of classifications, as he so calls it, for your behaviors, right? So a pleasing one is something that's generally pretty short-lived, but you have a high amount of fun or satisfaction with it.
Mm.
Living is both a lot of time and high satisfaction or high fun.
Mhm.
Agonizing, shitload of time, very little fun. Yielding, low time, low fun, right?
Mm.
And so you can classify all the stuff you're doing into one of these potential categories, but your goal inevitably is to create most things that you do in your life becoming a living environment thing. You spend a lot of time on it and you love it, right?
Yeah.
And it brings you a good amount of satisfaction and fun. And I'm like, He's like, and to overcome some of those agonizing behaviors, like you just talked about with fitness, you got to find ways to make it fun, do something fun with it. So again, meet up with a friend, go for the walk, meet up with the trainer. They hold you accountable. Maybe they're fucking funny. Maybe they tell good jokes. Maybe they don't have the best program, but you show up 3-4 days a week, right?
Yeah. You
You
got
know,
some good music, maybe. I don't know.
exactly. Maybe they hype the environment. I go to so and so's class on X app because the music, the playlist is fire, right? And she has a good personality. But that takes
Yeah.
the agonizing behavior of, like, again, a Peloton ride for an hour, or a spin class, and now makes it somewhere that you feel like it's maybe a little more pleasing or a little bit in the more of the living category.
I
And I
love
was
this.
like, that is amazing. It took me so long to actually remember the P though in that stupid model, because I was like, I know it's like, what is P? P is pleasing, right?
Yeah.
And so you look at that continuum, find more ways to be living, right? Find ways to make your workouts a part of that living category. And again,
Yeah.
some shit that you didn't even realize could be classified as a workout now could be reclassified in that living category,
Living
like
category. Yeah.
going
Mhm.
for a
Mhm.
hike, doing a bike ride, like just the activity that you are just like, man, I really want to do that thing and it's calling me. Like my newest thing I want to get into is like a sprint try. I've always wanted to do it. I know I have to learn 3 skills, and 2 of which I don't really love: biking and running. So, there's a lot of agonizing things, but I know once I do it more, it might be more pleasing because I'll do like short amount of efforts, short enough that I can make it enjoyable. Right.
Yeah.
But again, like I've identified that particular thing that is a goal of mine. I know that there's some agonizing behaviors. There's already one thing that I enjoy in there that's fun, which is swimming. So I would definitely recommend reading at least that chapter of the book. I think it's like the first chapter where it talks about that. Um, but again, to the other things that the book has to offer about like how to make things more fun. Again, thought it was a good topic. It's a good book in the sense that we as humans are not having enough fun. So I'm going to ask the question to everybody listening to this, like, when's the last time you just you did something fun?
No, that's a really good question. I love that. I think that's actually a really good question because it's like I think sometimes I'm a person that just like puts things on the calendar and it's like I'm doing this because I'm doing it to check off a list, you know? Like
Right. Well, let's ask you the question, Seamus. Like, hey, when's the last time you did something fun? That you would
Well, jujitsu for me is always fun, even though it's on the calendar, because the thing about jujitsu is there's so much uncertainty
Oh yeah.
in jujitsu. And that's what makes it fun because like you don't know who you're gonna see. I saw a bunch of new friends. I saw a bunch of my friends that were like basically we were training together a lot before COVID,
Mhm.
2019, 2018, and these were people that like, dude, we were up and coming together, and I didn't see him for almost 2, 3 years.
Yeah.
And I got to see a lot of them and got to see like, wow, how much better they had gotten. And I was like, yo, this is wild because they're like kicking my ass right now, kicking my ass right now. So it was fun because you get to see a lot of people. There's a lot of uncertainty of like, oh, how's this technique gonna work out, or hey, how's this person gonna go? So yeah, I mean, for me, it's at least once a week with the jiu-jitsu, but that's in the calendar. I think for me, like
Mhm.
last time, kind of having fun with just movement and stuff. I did an ice bath the other day too. That was really unexpected and like it was a lot of fun because I was doing ice and heat, but I was doing it with like my two best friends, and it was
Yeah.
great. It was really great going into deep conversations and just
Yeah.
um,
You
finding more context of life. So
you stack something that could be viewed as agonizing with something that's pleasing, or like, again, like you're finding ways that, like, again, most people, an ice bath, F that, dude. Like, you know what I mean? But yeah, again, I know all the benefits. I've listened to it on Rogan a million times at this point, right? It already does, right? But then doing it and having the other people there, right?
Mhm.
It's funny how that all can manifest into something new and good. And for me, mine's not even fitness related that I've had fun. My fitness has been fun for the last 6-8
Forever.
weeks, longer than that
Yeah.
since we hadn't been training together. Like it's fun every day. You know, we're there. It's an hour and a half of like dad time, more or less, right? But last weekend we got the families together. We went to the park. I was outside for literally 4 hours, 3.5 maybe. Yeah, it was like 2:30 to like 6 until it got dark. We were just letting our kids running around with them, kicking balls, right, riding bikes, doing all those things, and time just flew by.
Yeah.
It was just making more time for fun. And again, we talked about it earlier in the week. Hey, we should get together this Saturday. Nothing's Granted, we didn't plan anything good for our nutrition. We ate Domino's, whatever, But again, it was fun. It was in the moment.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't take it back because I can see that
Yeah.
you're going to help improve my decisions for this next week. And it's
Yeah.
moving. So
I think people forget about that. Like you get, going back to where like, hey, we have a goal for fitness. And I know a lot of people, just because it's just a territory I've worked with, is like their goal is like, I want to get in good shape and I want to like lose fat. And they kind of forget, like, dude, like you also like you're trying to live, like if you have like Domino's like once in a blue moon in your freaking weight loss phase, I don't think it's gonna be like the biggest thing. So it's like, just to summarize, like don't beat yourself up because like you were having fun doing your movement and you ate a little something off and off. If anything, you probably needed it and it's still part of the plan. And
I woke up lighter the next day and I didn't even walk as much as I normally do. What does that tell you? You know what I mean? I don't even know what I ate that day.
Boom. Exactly.
Right? There's
yeah, it's crazy. But talking about food, I wanted to kind of talk something about our segment here, Marcos. I wanted to kind of cover three segments, and I like this one. Talking about food, though, I'm gonna present this first one. This is something I learned that's new. I don't know if you've seen this before.
Did you know you can get $3 off of Domino's if you go pick it up yourself versus using a delivery app? Fun fact.
Do you see my screen here, right here?
Tavala.
Okay, so my client actually told me about this, and I'm actually very interested because I'm like, $100 for this oven? Yeah, sure, why not? So this is Tavala. I just heard about this recently. So everyone, I'm kind of on the excitement, but it is an oven. Look at this oven. All right, it's a smart oven attached to your phone through an app, and basically it makes these smart meals. So you order meals that have does anyone here have like what's that cup of coffee, that thing that makes a cup, is like
the Keurig?
The Keurig, like it has a barcode. It's kind of like that.
Oh, you're talking about
not
my cousin even works for the freaking company. Nespresso. Nespresso has like the QR code one.
Yeah, QR code.
Yeah.
This is the same thing. So basically is you have these meals. They're prep meals already. You put it in the smart oven with a scan. Look at that. Look, they scan the code like a Keurig and it comes out in 20 minutes or less. And I'm like, hey, yo, this looks amazing. So I would say it's a very closed IP. It's kind of like Apple, where it's an integrated system where only the system works with itself, because like, I mean, yeah, you can cook this food on your own, and take them out of these things, but like this system right here is built to do it perfectly for you.
So the unit cost is $100 currently with their sale, it looks like. But what is the food cost if you just called it like a closed system?
Yeah, what does the food cost? I'm not so sure. I didn't even check. Let's see explore the menu. But my client loves it because he's like really overweight, but he works a lot. And he's saying like, look, like, for him financially, it makes sense. It makes sense for him. I think these are, I mean, to be quite honest, $12.99 per serving for some foods. Not the most expensive I've seen for a food prep company. Not the most.
No, I mean,
I'd like to see that. Like,
click on one of them. What's the calorie and what's the yield? I mean, like total macro or protein.
Let's look at like a Southwestern chicken wrap because that looks great. 18 minutes to prep. Let's look at the nutrition. I love the website though. Look at how integrated it is.
36
calories, 680. That's a lot of fat.
that's like half my day's worth.
That's like half my day's worth. Protein, that's pretty good protein at least. Carbs are significant. I wonder how they got 680 calories out of that, because I'm looking at the macros. I'm like,
wait, so 90 times 4 is 360. No, that's right. That's right.
Yeah? Okay.
It's just, I think it looks skewed, like low, because like we probably both don't eat that much fat, and there's such a high protein carb yield for us. So
Yeah. I'm
you
like,
could do. I mean, again, like this might be a more of a zone type of thing, and it would work fine. But
it honestly works fine. I think it's great. And I mean, it looks like they have a great variety. Um, I always love to get excited about new options and new things. I might, give this a
this
shot.
is a menu for this week, so they like might rotate their menu
Yeah,
items
look,
a little
yeah.
bit.
Let's see next. Let's see what it was this week. Oh, snap,
Oh,
they do rotate it. Look at this.
ooh, that actually those maple
Wow,
garden
holy
barbecue
cow.
meatballs with sweet potatoes. All right.
Dang, okay. This is where it gets enticing, I guess, is this weekly menu. I like this creamo trout mushroom. That looks good.
I think the thing here, by looking at it, it's not microwaving like a meal prep per se. It
Yeah,
has those like the way it looked like in the packaging for those who are listening and not watching. They're
yeah.
in foil containers, so you basically put in the oven, probably like based on the instructions. Boom, you're in there. It's cooking everything simultaneously, and then
Yeah.
out pops your entire meal. But again, more of like from an oven standpoint, which feels a lot more fresh than a microwave. So
Yeah.
that could be an ingenious thing. But again, like if it's, I don't know. I mean, shoot, man, like you just said, hey, pop it in there. I know it's going to take 16 minutes. I'm going to walk away, go do a quick little email and come back. So
Yeah. I mean, to be quite honest, like I don't know how big this smart oven is, but let's just say like, you and me, you're a family guy. Like, I mean, look at this. I mean, it looks like a microwave.
it
I
looks
would
like it's
say
only for you. I mean, let me
if
so
it's
like
like a
you and
one or two, it might not make sense for like a multifamily. Like I don't really think so. But
yeah,
if you're like a high value personnel
hey,
person that's just like always just like working, and
yeah,
it's like, dude, you can't be bothered for 30 minutes to make a meal. Like seriously, you can't be, and like you don't like other meal prep companies, and you've tried, and it just hasn't worked out for you. This might be an option. I don't know. 15 minutes in there, they got a scanner, they have a rotating menu every week, it keeps things fresh. It could be very like my client, he's a single, he's older, he's single, but he works a lot, and like this works for him. So it might be that kind of personality, maybe, that kind of style. So
yeah. And I mean, there might be ways to just use it as the air fry oven as well. Looks like so.
yeah.
It probably does great chicken nuggets. The kids love that.
I saw a meme today. I think you might have seen this one. My kids are so cultured that they have tried the chicken nuggets at the local Mexican restaurant. And when we went to Mediterranean today, they tried the chicken nuggets there too.
Yeah,
So
dude, it's like my son. He won't eat a quesadilla unless it's from Chipotle.
oh,
You know what I mean? He's a snob. It's hilarious, but it's so true.
I love it. Let me share the next segment, guys. So this is kind of like the product of the week we're talking about. So
Yeah.
pretty cool product. I definitely like this idea. Let's go check out here. Let me go and share my screen again real fast. Apologies. We're gonna look at an article of the week, and that's gonna be. So this is an interesting one. This is Dr. Stacy Sims, so I've been reading her book, a few of her books, and I know you're familiar with her book too, right? Next Level Roar, right, Marcos? It's a hormonal health book for females primarily.
I have not read it
Um,
personally, but I mean, I've had a lot of women reference Stacy Sims on
yeah,
in multiple occasions and instances, and I'm just usually like, well, they don't see it, but I'm nodding my head, yes, like,
yes,
yeah,
yes, yeah.
I know what you're talking about. But now I've
Dr.
just heard it
Yeah.
so many times. Yeah,
Just a precursor for a lot of the audience viewers out there. Like I am always looking at educational books and things like that. And a lot of the material I actually take in is a lot for women, because if you're managing a gym, I'm gonna ask any gym managed persons, like, what do you think most gyms are? Most boot camps are. It's like 85% woman, 15% men. It's like it's the weirdest thing. So you got to know the female anatomy. You got to understand a few things. And I had a whole year that I had a project that was training female women in their third trimester of pregnancy, like, or actually taking them through like a whole pregnancy program. So a lot of the female stuff, like I value it a lot because I work with a lot of female clients. And for those listening, like if you're a male, I think it's still important to understand what I'm going to say here, because it does dictate to you when you understand the other person too. So this article says, yes, you are an athlete. No, you shouldn't practice intermittent fasting. And here it is. So this article basically breaks down, if anyone wants to basically do this, is intermittent fasting for females, especially female athletes. It's not really that great for like their sex hormones or their endocrine system or even their reproductive system, because she talks about like it disrupts the kisspeptin production, which like it's just a neuropeptide. But basically what it's doing there is it's like another stressor, and it messes with like the hormone cycle, it messes with like the menstrual cycle. So if you were to look at people that fast, though, I think you might know this, Marcos, too, but like when you ask someone who fasts, I think like the general population of people that fast are usually who get great benefit are younger males, younger lean males, because they have the ability to do so. But if you're a female and you're having a lot of hormonal fluctuations, and women on average are 5 times to 7 times more prevalent to anxiety for other reasons, not just their hormonal, but compare that with now asking you to perform at a high level, like being like a Spartan ultra marathon or whatever it is. Fasting wouldn't probably be like your best like approach, you know?
I can actually speak to that, like kind of fasting and my wife, because it's just like her natural like cadence. She's
Okay.
like, I don't really get hungry till 2. But then she does
Mhm.
deal with a myriad of like anxiety type issues, or like, you know, my focus, or I'm feeling really off as a result of this. So of course I'm just gonna reference the closest living female in my household, aside from my daughter, because she can't articulate that quite yet.
Yeah.
Like again, like I do try to force food on her earlier in the day. Like, hey, can I just make you some breakfast? You know, a couple eggs, some bacon. Just knowing that like her system, she's not like always in that like sympathetic state, right?
Yeah.
Fight or flight. And I think fasting can induce that for women a little bit quicker, probably because of their body size. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
throw that as my hypothesis.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, just from seeing that with her, I would imagine that like based on this, that you know that's a really important thing, and men probably can handle that slightly higher cortisol drive in the morning as a result of fasting, and they feel a little bit sharper cognitively.
Yeah, it says it right here too. I'll use this line right here. It's like, yes, we hear people rave about the increased mental focus with the keto diet or intermittent fasting. And men, yes, they have an increase in their parasympathetic, aka rest and digest, so they can be more relaxed and present. That's what you're talking about in that
Yeah,
cortisol hit in
yeah,
the
of
morning,
course.
right?
Yeah,
However, in women, the sympathetic, aka flight or flight drive, it 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 picks up the sympathetic, which is the fight or flight. Apologies there. So you're more anxious, more prone to being depressed, and can't sleep well, which again hurts the hormonal health, performance, and well-being. So um, that's just an idea that, again, this is just a general thing that this doctor has seen, especially working with all those folks. So there might be exclusions, obviously, right? But in general, I think when it comes to making recommendations, intermittent fasting might not be the recommendation, right? It has to always come down to the individual. So I hope this thing.
yeah, and
Yeah.
again, it's. I mean, I think thing that I've stumbled on in my most recent learning has been starting your day off with something that aids in getting the digestive juices flowing, right?
Mhm.
Because again, you may not be hungry, but then starting with like a smoothie or a shake that has a lot of nutrients in it. I've been doing it personally. I feel really good. I actually don't feel like I have as many cravings as I normally do. Um, and I can imagine something similar, maybe not even as many calories as mine. Mine's only like 550, like
Yeah.
250, 300 for a woman that's like, just get you going. Could be again, have a boatload of benefit. But again, like I get it. You hear all this research, you hear all these studies, and you think that it's going to be applicable to you, and then you're like, but it's not working. I feel worse. So, you know,
Yeah.
you have to live through some anecdotal experience, right?
You got to live through a lot of these things. And I think, we had a previous guest on talk about how they tried a lot of things. And it's like, yeah, I've tried so many things too. And I think it's important to try. But try with no end goal in mind or expectation in mind until you find something that works. You know, I've tried so many things, and you know what works for me? What works really well for me is just a balanced macro diet. Like, it's very vertical wish with like good red meats, and there's a lot of heat about red meat and like how it's not even on the totem pole against Lucky Charms, but like CNN dropping that knowledge. But like you know, I do a lot of like red meats, veggies, easy carbohydrates on my system, and I rotate that with like good fats. You know, it works really well for me. But I've tried vegan, I've tried keto, I've tried Atkins, I've tried paleo, I've tried so many things, and it's like I feel like I just kind of blended like what works for me, and just it takes a lot of trying before you can kind of go, oh, this makes sense, you know. And that goes to the same thing that we talked about with like training as our main topic is like I tried so many different training programs that I'm like, oh, this makes sense for my goal this time. So
and why are you, and again, like, why are you sticking with the training you're doing right now? Why are you sticking with the eating that you're doing right now? There's probably some level of comfort, right? It's familiar enough. You know, you feel pretty dang good. You know that it's leading to usually positive outcomes. So, you know, a lot of times just giving things enough time, you know, could be the best. So be so serving. So, yeah. What's the last article that we, or the last
article, guys, is going to be a person or icon of the week. The icon of the week, guys, is going to be, you're going to laugh, but it's the boy Tony Robbins. Okay. I know he has a weird face right there, but, so at the time of this conversation, so this is an impact theory podcast. Great podcast, but this was all leading up to Tony Robbins' Unshakable event. At the time of this podcast recording, the Unshakable event is like pretty much ending, but it was a 5-day event. I don't do everything that Tony Robbins does, but I've been doing a lot of things that Tony Robbins has done for like the last 8 years of my life. I got to meet the guy. I went to his UPW, Unleash the Power Within. I don't think he's woo. He does a lot of things scientifically based on your state, your like kind of like your strategy and story in your head, but it all starts with your state. Are you in a highly energized state or are you not? So a lot about his stuff is a lot about like state and belief changes, right, in a matter of time, seconds, because we were just talking about that. But his 5-day event, which is like a free event for 5 days, and he's been doing this for 3 years now, and I've done it the last 3 years, is 90 minutes or 2 hours of him just breaking down like, what's your story been like? What's your beliefs been like? How have they been serving you? What's your state like? Are you tired all the time? Things like this. And I think he's an icon of the week because yes, he uses like your physical movement, fitness related, but then he helps you create a new narrative, a new belief system so that you can achieve any of your goals. And that's outside of fitness. That might be in your finances, that might be in your relationship, that might also be in your career, spiritual health. So I just wanted to throw this one out just because I felt like it was kind of around this time that he was doing his 5-day event. I felt like, okay, this guy makes sense to talk about. Any experience with him, Marcos, or any of his stuff?
Zero.
None at all.
None. And then I'm always like quick to maybe be counter to a lot of people that are of high influence value.
Oh yeah.
Just because that's just, I don't know, part of me. And I seem to shake it. But like when I do hear more people, you know, interjecting their points related to somebody, then I'm more open to then listening to said person. Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, obviously with this one, make sure we have this link shared so people can maybe go watch this because it obviously impacted you, which I think is really important. And I'll give it a listen too, because, you know, I just remember, and I think this is going back to my own reminiscing, being a part of like meetings and events were always MLM related, right? You leave on this fucking high and you're like, oh my God, I'm like, at like 13 years old, I'm ready to fucking sell the world, you know? And then,
and then like, you don't do any of that
you
stuff.
don't do anything. You like, but it's funny because every time I have a freaking client call, I feel like hopefully that's the experience I'm giving to them. Like they're just ready to uplift the world. And you know that those juices are probably good for about 7 days.
Right? They're probably good for a few days. Yeah.
You know, and you're like, that high motivation. Damn, we talked about that. That really is impactful. But yeah, like I know that he's like probably the best to ever do it. You know, we could say him, Gary Vee, you know, Andy Frisella, all these other Ed Milet, all these people that are of such high prestige. They obviously are good at that speaking arrangement and talking to an audience. So I think part of me is just afraid that I'll be called out on some bullshit, being honest, you know, and then I got to go fucking address it. I'm not ready. Not ready.
You know what's really funny is you're 100% correct, because so I did his Unleash the Power Within event 2017, and the people I surrounded myself with were people just like that. And like, you get called out a lot more when you're in that environment, but because you went through the motions, like, well, he didn't want you to go through the motions. He wanted you to go through the exercises, changing your state, changing your story. And when you change your state, whether like right now, maybe I might be tired, lethargic. All right, now I'm high energy, right? All that. When you change your physical state, that helps your mind create a different story about a certain problem you're having. Okay, what does that have to do with anything? Well, once you have a different state and story, your strategy is a lot different than a person that would be low state, you know, things like that. And that's, I think that right there is a 3-step process. I mean, he goes through it all. And I think it's important. It might be the same thing that you're doing with your clients too. It's the same thing I'm doing with them. I'm trying to see where they're at, try to change what they're doing, make a new story about them, and give them a different strategy. And that's what it really is. Obviously there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot of hoorah, and like, if anyone's seen like a Tony Robbins thing, just people jumping fucking around, like going crazy. But I don't really think that that's it. I think there's more to it than that. I think you have to experience it yourself, and you know, you're more than welcome to. I'm not going to push it on you. I think it's just it's a cool little thing. And I think he's put out a lot there. You know, he's got 5 books. I mean, he's got what is it? Oh, Jesus. I'm blanking right now. Unlimited Power, Awaken the Giant Within, Money Master the Game, Unshakable, and then his newest book, Life Force, which is kind of funny, is kind of like a counter, not a counter, but like one of our competitors in the space of longevity. So
so to speak. And there's some interesting things on that you'll become aware of very soon. Some inner working stuff, I think.
Yeah, no, I'll yeah, no, I think I might know.
Yeah. Which is pretty cool. I mean, it's just crazy to, again, like, both of our lives are entrenched with a lot of interesting things, man. And hopefully, you know, I feel like we can end it there, man. I mean, this is
just end it there, dude. Icon of the week, man. I hope everyone likes that. And guys, when it comes to your goals and stuff, I hope this kind of helped you out in terms of the podcast today. I think we rambled a little bit there, but appreciate you. Another episode of the Macro Perspective. Other than that, we're out.
Later, everybody.